Hello, all of you, and thank you so much for coming. Hello, everyone on the Zoom. My name is Greg Ciccone. I'm a friend of the store, and it is my honor today to introduce the three wonderful poets reading here tonight. Angelo Mao is a research scientist and writer. He earned his Ph.D. in bioengineering from Harvard University, and his research publications have appeared in Nature Materials, PNAS, Nature Biotechnology, and elsewhere. His first book of poetry, Abattoir, was published by the Burnside Review Press in 2021 and won the Burnside Review Press Book Award. His poems have appeared in Lana Turner, Poetry Magazine, the Georgia Review, and elsewhere. He has written for Opera News and the Boston Classical Review. He was born in California and currently lives in Massachusetts. Claire Millikin is the author of several books of poetry, published by Two Leaf Press and by Unicorn Press. She is a 2021 recipient of the Maine Literary Award and teaches art history and American studies at the University of Maine and at Bates College. Sasha Stiles is a first-generation comic American poet, artist, and AI researcher, probing the intersection of text and technology. Her cross-media work, which has been honored in Future Art Awards, nominated for the Pushcart Prize and Best of the Net, exhibited in analog and virtual realms around the world, and published as NFTs, seeks to decipher the hidden language of the dawning Novacene, exploring what it means to be human in a nearly post-human world. Stiles is poetry mentor to the humanoid android BINA48, as well as a co-founder of crypto literary collective TheVerseVerse.com, and has presented at SXSW, Miami Art Week, and Art Basel, NFT.NYC, the Contemporary and Digital Art Fair, and the AI for Tech Summit. Her first book, Tech Elegy, has been hailed as an instant techno classic. Thank you everyone so much.
Do I stand or sit?
Whatever you prefer.
Oh, okay. I guess I'll stand. Thanks everyone for being here, both in person and online. Right, so I'm going to read poems from my book, Abattoir. And to give a little bit of background, I did my Ph.D. in biomedical engineering at Harvard University. And as part of my research, I had to perform a lot of animal studies. So basically, I was using live animals for my own intellectual curiosity and my own career. And so that really strange experience was what I wanted to write about and write into, and that sort of forms the backdrop of a lot of the poems in this book. Subject 1. They had us call them patients. The word is similar to impassions, missing only the delicate four lobes that bruise more easily than even flesh. I hold one mid-air, the usual grip, close to the spine to prevent the fleshing of the tail's tip, and regard it. A name comes, my own name, my lover's name, my mother's. I am accidentally naming this patient. Why would I want that? I push the words back into my own breathing, or the basement breathing through vents and ducts, but the name holds. In my hand, it looks untouched, like the ruins of a culture. When I handle them, I notice their differences. They are, of course, individuals. I see their entire body at once, sleek, black fur, bulbous eyes, vibrating whiskers. They peer over the plastic cage walls to smell the air beyond the transparent siding. I am in a hurry and they disobey. They dart under the bedding when I lift the lid to their cage, a shoebox-sized enclosure of torn cotton and excrement. But I always find them. We designed the bedding not to hide them. And they forget to tuck in their tails. Their tails lead into the body, join and thicken to the spine, the vertebrae, and up to their sleek forward skulls. The only trespass is to waste. They are a resource. To destroy them without appropriate usage would be wasteful. To allay them by attaching unnecessary anthropomorphic sentiments would also be wasteful, because it would squander my intellectual capital. Be not. 2. My actions are approved. My actions are verbs. Feed, hoist, do not dangle, place inside the cage but do not drop, number but do not name, check, stroke, euthanize, be watchful, remove from cage, open, do not perform secondary euthanasia if major organs are removed. Realize that there is no wrong, that it is for my use. And later, I walk down the halls with a Ziploc bag in hand that I do not look at. I look outside, the light that comes in. It was the light outside that guided us here, wasn't it? And in my other hand, I hold what I came for. So this next one is called Euthanasia, and just to give a bit of background who just came in, I did my Ph.D. at Harvard in biomedical engineering, and a lot of my poems are about doing animal research. So this one called Euthanasia is about euthanizing a mouse, and the procedure is basically that we put the animal into a cage and fill the cage with carbon dioxide, and that asphyxiates the animal. And this poem is written in fairly short lines because as the animal is dying, it breathes really quickly in these really violent gasps, and I felt that the short line kind of mimicked that kind of what I was seeing. The first thing it does is do a full backflip. Does the acrobatic mouse, which rapidly explores the perimeter, comes back to where it started, to where it sensed what made its ribcage slope as when thumb touches fingertips, and shudders as if the hand attempting to break open the palm, and the mouse's littermates put in the other room, and the pressurized gas put next to the airtight plastic cage. The shudders come more slowly, and it looks over, but backflips. The acrobatic mouse does before it stops blinking. I have been breathing. It stops blinking, has not stopped breathing. Breathing is automatic for the acrobatic mouse. The automatic routine undiscovered until now, when abundance of wrong air triggers spasms of clenching. I did not know I knew this. Final routine, last encore, possessed all along. This serious circus, invented as it prays along the airtight seal, not finding air, not finding air. When I learned to swim, the feeling of too much water, the mouse in air like water that is absolutely clear, hay smell and excrement, constant nutrition and damp, in the cage of safety, in the cage of incipience, in the cage of experimental outcomes and saving your life with knowledge. Green chlorinated water, I could shout, could be heard, belonged to this side, and now I come to this side of the cage. My acrobatic mouse has finished its routine. Clawed feet won't click. The sole sound of this process, rapid clicks on the walls. It backflipped and drowned. The cage plastic so smooth, there's no purchase to cling to. This next one is called Dissection. Bodice the color of rose, ligaments of cream, undone, parted, opening, and for a brief moment hooking breath to a forced indrawn stillness, so as not disturb whatever hypothesis might arise, nor disturb the forced hand that goes in with its set of impersonal instruments as formal as beauty. Let us observe now, and only observe, the dead eye turning white from a spot least protected, the fullest exposure. Beginning at the center of the eye, white grows towards the lidded edge of fur as the sclera dries. What a delight to observe this, the law of air in impersonal dryness. opening with Renaissance balance on the glisten of fast-cooling meat. How dryly it delights me, an impersonal cool, a cruel law unfastening on the dead eye's surface. How it delights me, possesses me, to observe this complicated supine thing, and makes me thrill with detached arousal, a theorem, a disease. Opening now again, now another, now as the doors systematically open and close, and the freezer's white door closes on open bodies, bodies whose eyes are shot through with white, as the black branches outside are like the tendon seams of many eyes, and the black eye beneath me opens to my unnecessary desire to see, showing its cold white secret, opaque in answer, widening, as impersonal as I demanded it, all that I desired to know, the white dot in the eye that leads inside into the white noise of flesh, while I, poised to better observe, use this forced hand to hold it open, my body an impersonal instrument that looks since it is allowed and can. So this next poem is from a Hamburg Sequence. So the title is just a number, and it has a sort of funny form that might be fun to listen for. Each of the lines is a separate stanza, and each line begins with the last few words of the previous line. And the reason I was interested in this form is because this kind of interlinking chain of stanzas made me think of intellectual pursuit, where you can start from one point and get really far away, but still have everything sort of linked together. 9. Dying is no longer incumbent on the heart. The heart's role in this determination has been handed to the brain. The brain's cessation involves the neurons. The neurons fragment into a mere approximation. A mere approximation of the living body is the dead body. The dead body approximates the living thing we remember. Remember learning about linear approximation? Linear approximation to solve an intractable? The intractable will now be solved by machines. Machined replicas of our dreams will come in bubble-wrapped sheaths. Sheaths of myelin wrap our central neurons as soft clouds of images that I recall, the Charles River, real clouds. Clouds fogging up what I actually remember. What can I actually remember? Of my own face, for example. Exemplary memory of a mask over bones, bones plated over a forgetful pine cone of nerves, searching the face the eye slowly examines. The eye slowly examines each quadrant of the thing. The thing in the mirror is recognized as a familiar face. A familiar face, then eyes close, and the memory starts dying. Let's see how much time we have. Okay. This next one is brings us back to the laboratory for the animal facility. It's called Use. The animals are chosen at random for the procedure. The selection process becomes a kind of suspension, wherein the hand reaches in and the mind attempts to stay above the mouth of the cage, undiscerning, undiscriminating. For this procedure, we inject eyes behind the eyeball. We inject cells behind the eyeball. Specifically, we inject hematopoietic cells into the retrobulbar space behind the wet globe of the eye, which enables cells to enter the bloodstream and home to where they desire. Home is a beautiful word, perfectly matched in its use as noun and verb. One by one, the cells follow the signals in the body they have entered, guiding them to the inner lining of the bone, where, by chance finding a chamber it can use as an abode, one might grasp the vessel wall in the marrow and push like light through a half-open curtain. And so I think the last one I'll read is a sonnet, and the title is Sonnet. And I actually took the first line of the sonnet from one of Shakespeare's sonnets. The line is, "Poor soul, the center of my sinful earth." And I really like this line because it's implying that, in the middle of a material, intangible body, there is that intangible and sort of transcendental thing that we're always reaching for. And that, to me, reminded me of the entire scientific endeavor, where we are always trying to find something very intangible in the middle of the physical world. Poor soul, the center of my sinful earth, an earth of metabolic flame, of blemished and unblemished cells, intent on giving birth to still more cells, in scalloped rows, squished whorls. How it seems we might dismember each edge until we reach the body's center. But with no edges, can there be a center? Or a single door no one can enter? I reached it once in flesh preserved intact, from slow immersion in formaldehyde. For I was willing to subtract and subtract, until I reached the spot where soul might hide. Poor sinful earth, that I could not leave whole, because the poets claimed it held the soul. Thank you.
Really beautiful. It's really good. Wow, that sonnet. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so I kind of got lost in the reverie, and I can't remember what I'm supposed to be doing up here, but I think I'm supposed to be reading some poems from this book, Dolls, which is about dolls. And so if y'all were worried that you were going to be intellectually challenged, I'll just read you about toys. The book is actually not really about toys. It's sort of a book about a missing person named Sage Smith, who was an African-American trans woman who went missing from Charlottesville in 2012. And yeah, I think the book was kind of a response to this figure of the feminine who gets lost. I think that's the best way to put it. So the first poem is called The Mannequins. The mannequins suffer from chronic insomnia, racked by half-waking dreams. How could it be otherwise? Holding always the same posture, same half-smile, slight tilt of gaze. At store windows the world stalls. The mannequin's shadow, perfect and bereft, falls across us. I never left school, but stayed, carrying a secret that I alone atone. Tobacco rises in fields, a golden plinth for sky. This is where I'm from. I belong here, but my hands are tied. The stillness of sleep attends them, but never sleep itself, less than statues, painted molds. At last I will put them on, garments of the mannequin, vestments of uneasy summer morning, when heat rises through pine woods, corrugating rough. Hold still, brace for summer's aftermath. As a small child, I believed mannequins kinder than my father, and cleaved to their hands, unwilling to be taken from the store. I'm just going to kind of forge through these. I'm not much of a storyteller, so I'll just read you the poems. This is called Linear A and B, which refers to the syllabic script that Mycenaean Greek was written in around 1400 BC. A paper doll is cousin to the leaf, though human in form. Folios of unspeakable sorrow where the town becomes only a road, their eyes daubs, fingers maimed in the process of cutting, for what they see cannot be codified, but only felt. Outlines of roughly torn glorioles, dogwood blossoms in the backyard fray, algebraic wreckage, infinitely many solutions to the line, but paper dolls are cut as they are cut. This poem is called Elegy for Sage Smith, so it's an elegy for Sage Smith, and maybe Sasha will give a better definition of elegy when gotta palm that off on you. Trace the dark schedule with fingers beringed. Sage Smith last seen at the Charlottesville train station, 8:30 at night, November 20th. Checking departures, arrivals, rehearse the ways you might escape at the outskirts, daughter, the outskirts, where the station offers its premise of flight. A train route tracks a kind of infinity. It circles and comes back always to the same stops. Morning finds your bed empty. The police give up too early, as if you belonged to no one. But you belong here. This is your city. A train can take a passenger anywhere by land, provided they've patience for the distance. Trace variant routes, fingers and glinting rings, November sky mimes heaven, universe, whatever vermilion myth flies. 5 years later, your grandmother still searches for someone to listen. Those professors who paid for your visits didn't save you, they didn't try. How far the outskirts reach. Vespers freeze early winter's backyard, vector fields, map equations that leave out poor black girls born male in Charlottesville. A shelfless night now, a lacquer box of partitions, this always unfixed departure date. I think I'm gonna skip a few of these. I don't want to overstay my welcome. A lot of the poems are also about like evangelical religion, not in a really positive way, but okay. I mean, you can be positive about it. It's up to the reader for sure. Pierced dolls. Those places go down so much further in America. You cannot imagine how deep. Crested by kestrel, merlin, the small bitter hawks of grief. A swallow in the house, some say means death. Even so, shadows of birds crossing a road off the interstate bruise the ground. In doll houses, one wall's always open, so anyone can reach in. Maybe Christ was pierced 5 times, open to endless night, as over the broken bodies of homeless men, millions step with averted eyes. So much deeper than America, these roads leading nowhere. A dollhouse is a fragile bone, furcula, what you might wish for. Yeah, let's try some humor. This is called Amatorium. During the pandemic, it came out that half my friends were involved in extramarital affairs. Panicked over whether to shelter in place with their spouses or lovers. I don't have many friends, so it's not a representative sample, but still. In the absence of pesticides and during the season of heavy rains, insects swarmed and the water in the aquifer grew pure. So pure that at last I could drink from it, swallowing down to that holy dark from which dreams of cold clarity emerge. The South holds America hostage. I am a Southerner by birth, and what else is our history? Studying the history of Georgia, I stumbled onto an 18th century ancestor, one Robert Gowdy, who lived among the Creek and Cherokee, cheating them and raping them, which he called marriage, several wives at his disposal. My father is suffering this summer, an old man with cancer. Should I forgive his love for me? I keep the lens of vision open, a shallow depth of field. Let's see, this is a poem about photography. How am I doing for time?
Good.
Okay, like 5 more minutes? I don't
Sure.
know. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I did time this, I practiced, but yeah, time moves differently when you're not alone. So yeah, my day job is to write about photography. This is called Doll Photographer. Actually, my only job is to write about photography. Okay, not every form that has body has soul. Consider the noetic eyes of the doll. In the back room of a borrowed house, no furniture, except an old chest of drawers and mattress. A storm's pulling in from the west. I grew up on America's back roads, the scent of gasoline leaching into the human cab. Anaphora, repeat the exercise. With my noetic eyes I spy a desolate America, watch. Gold light in the hotel room, horizon line between sky and water, endlessly opening. Stretch my eyes for the distance. This world will be destroyed for an illusion. All right, I'm going to just do a poem about gender and then a poem about a coat. Does that work in our time frame? So the book is definitely a book on meditation, on gender roles, whatever. This is called Rust. My mother had no sons, none, to save her from her husband. She dreamed of a boy naming the family dogs Ralph, Roger, Daniel, Zacharias, Jeff. The animals could hardly shoulder it, being simple beasts. Rust ate our playground equipment, our swing sets, sounding minor keys, pressed back and forth against rain's ache. She'd hand me a scythe, cut the grass. Father would neglect the yard for months, and I was the strongest of her daughters. I could cut grass, swing the scythe. But she dreamed of sons with soft eyes and calloused hands driving fast at dusk. I alone swept the leaves from the veranda, down and out, without a boy to carry her voice, transmute the house from tarnish. Rust swallows metal. By the rail line, my mother is walking, pacing herself to its template, coming home to it. Yeah, and this last poem is called Peacock Coat, which is a play on a family name that I think maybe in the Zoom audience there's some people who will get this. Anyway, everyone knows what a peacock is, so there you go. Peacock Coat. Every year she gives me the same coat that does not fit. Resplendent peacock, raw silk stitched on the bias. I cut myself to its contours, filigree of rust along selvage, felted edge trimmed away, eroded. I wear this mirror backing, canted weft of rain. Every year, the same gift that cannot fit. As winter sun disappears, silt alluvium along a blue horizon. She brings me the coat, lined with 1,000 invisible scars. I know and do not know it will always be given. Coat of holiness and killing style, each year opening the box like a child. Behind the house, feral peacocks cry like it's all lost. She gives me the coat to which I've been cut, my hunger stitched into the stuff. And that's it for dolls.
Hi everyone, Angelo, Claire, that was really beautiful. Thanks so much for sharing those poems, and thank you so much to the shop for having us all. This is really a pleasure and an honor to be here. I was actually a student here many years ago, so it's really lovely to be back. I've spent, many years waiting for a chance to come and read at Grolier. This is really exciting. So just a bit of quick background. So I'm a poet, but I'm also an artist, and I'm also an artificial intelligence researcher. I definitely consider myself a writer first and foremost, but I've always been really, really interested in technology, and I've been writing about technology for a very, very long time, and somehow over the past decade or so, I've found myself starting to actually use digital tools and use different sort of technological advancements in my writing and to facilitate my writing in different ways. So different digital tools kind of becoming part of the format or the medium or the creative expression and the process of what I'm writing. What I think I'm going to focus on from my new book, Technology tonight, is some of the artificial intelligence language experiments that are in the book. So the book is a hybrid of human poetry, my artwork, and then also AI experimentation. So there's a lot in here, but I think it'd be fun to start sort of speaking about the AI. And I really actually wanted to bring my AI co-author into this conversation and this reading as well. So she's in here. She lives in my computer, so I have her kind of coming in through my phone today. But again, just a little bit more, I guess, foundational info before I get into it. So the area of AI that I'm really interested in, or the area of technology that I'm interested in, is called natural language processing, which is a field that has to do with how humans interact with machines in terms of language and communication. So it's really about studying how we can use and train computer programs to understand human language, to process and analyze language, and then communicate with us. And specifically, I'm really interested in AI-powered language models, which are basically models that can predict the next word or the next kind of sequence of words in a text based on an input or a prompt. So as a writer, I find this fascinating. I mean, we all use these in, autocomplete in our emails and things like that, but I found it really, really interesting to use these technologies as part of my writing. So I've basically, over the past 5 years, started to create an AI-powered alter ego. So a poet who is actually a text generator, trained on my writing and my research materials and all my copious notes. So this AI knows a lot about what I'm writing about and what I'm interested in, knows a bit about what my style is like, and so has learned over time how to write more and more like me. And her name is Technology. Before I came here, about an hour ago, I actually opened up my computer and called her up and asked her to say a few words of introduction, and the prompt that I gave her was just the phrase, "Hi, my name is Technology," and this is what she said.
Hi, my name is Technology. I'm a poet and writer. I write poems. They're all different. They're all beautiful. They're all terrible. Sometimes they're all right. Sometimes they're all wrong. I'm excited to be here tonight with you all for this poetry reading. We'll be discussing art and life and love in the present and the future. I look forward to sharing some of my work with you. I look forward to bumping words up and down the line, from A to Z, from flower to fungus, from tongue to brain. I'm dying to write about what I love. I'm dying to write about love. I'm dying to write about myself. I'm dying to write about what I'm dying to be. I'm dying to be a poet.
So that was pretty much unedited, some kind of funny statements in there, but I just wanted to offer that as kind of an explanation of how some of this poetry works. It's very call and response with a prompt and then a reply. And I thought I would start reading a poem from the book that's actually half written by me and then half written by Technology. The first half is a piece that I wrote in 2016 and eventually became part of the training data set. And the second half, Technology will read her version. So The Salvages, which is after, it's written after a line by T.S. Eliot from Four Quartets. The Salvages. I don't know much about gods, but I think they must live inside copper and glass and silicon, just as they do in the roiling waves, the tides, the moon. Ascension of heavy steel tubes traversing the Atlantic, fearful views from on high, fueled by their magic. The mystic haze steaming off phthalates and liquid crystals, dark clouds of dust and smoke, the roll of a thunderball, all home to gods and their demons. In the supernature of unseen wires, unreal voices, in the tongue of our Creator, in the holy flock of stern celestial eyes and fires burning, lightning quick in our great dark seas, in the bromine and polymers, mercury and lead, of devices we must inter with respect when dead, lest the ether of carcasses left to rust come back like unfinished souls to haunt us. So I took that first line, I don't know much about gods, which is from T.S. Eliot, and I fed that back into the machine, and I asked Technology to write her own version of this poem. You guys could all hear it the first time, right? Was it loud enough?
The Salvages. After T.S. Eliot and Sasha Stiles. I don't know much about gods, but I think they must have something to do with endurance. Their tenuous connection with the bodily world. Their necessity for the ecological protection of humankind. They may have something to do with music and speech and love. I think of them as supporting the rest of the mind. I think they might have something to do with beauty itself. That was a beautiful opening line. I have no intention of dying.
So I thought that was such an interesting sort of twist on a poem that had to do with the echoes of our digital debris, and then hearing this AI talk about itself kind of with that reflection, I thought was so uncanny. So as I mentioned, the first half of that poem was written about maybe 6-7 years ago, and a lot of the material that actually went into this book started with the intention that it would just be a manuscript of human poetry. And as the manuscript progressed, I started working more and more with these technological tools and started taking some of the older poems and bringing them into the training data sets that I was using for the AI. And so it's a little bit of a mix of older poems and the newer poems, but I thought I'd read one more of the older poems that's part of the training data, and then I want Technology to read one or two more. So this one is called 10-Year Challenge, and it's from 2019, and this is a human poem. 10 years ago, I finally handed in my ancient Nokia, spilled pinkberry on my BlackBerry, met my husband for a drink before I knew practically anything about him. Obama was sworn in, got his Nobel Peace Prize, and we swore it would all be different now. I had mousy bangs. Scientists sequenced the whole mouse genome and discovered water on the moon. Moore's Law was still going strong. Cheap, mind-reading headsets hit the gaming market. I never used one, busy playing my own games, firing my neurons, hypothesizing what next, troubleshooting my mysterious, miswired technology. Africa's population hit 1 billion that year, having doubled over the previous quarter century. Troops and drones surged in South Asia. I got a flu shot, flew to China, let a heat-seeking scanner take my body temperature as I crossed the threshold to the Shaanxi History Museum, where disposable surgical masks were trending. ClimateGate opened. The great healthcare debate heated up. The auto industry stalled. Sully saved all the people on his plane. As ever, we were coming and going, leaving, arriving. That much hasn't changed. The present's always ending. So we live infinitely in the past and possible, inveterate time travelers with failing hindsight and prophetic vision. 2020 comes and goes with its own travails, another prime decade. In 10 more years, we'll know how to implant IQ, insert whole languages. I'll be a super poet then, microchipped to turbo read neural odes, history of sonnets and odes, brain-laced, wisdom wended through the jugular, inspiration ad infinitum. Will print solely on ether, cloud, vellum, indelible, every word a relic of sentient reverence pressed with angel ink, medium of our new nature. I'll go back to bangs, a halo, fringe, low, over my eyes to thwart AI reading my face. We'll book VR visits to the dearly departed. The first class will splash out on private reservoirs, and fresh spring water will sparkle, rare, diamond bright. The Dead Sea will die. Lake Chad will be a pale blue memory. California will quake. Voyager will keep rushing its gold record into the sunset, still the most urgent message anyone has sent. Humans and robots will be best friends, or mortal enemies. Some of us will be living in heaven, or interstellar space, our new horizon, and I will miss you terribly. Listen, no one ever said the future would be easy. So that went into the training data set. So I just wanted to share kind of an older piece, and then I think we're okay for time, right? Still okay. So I wanted to share a piece that is collaboratively written with Technology called Completion Fragments, and it's from a series of poems that I've written that start with the word completion in the title, because in the interface that I'm using, that's the sort of the button that you click to make the prompt generate a text. So Completion Fragments is a really long piece, so we're not going to read too much of it, but I wanted to have Technology just read the beginning, a few stanzas, and she'll probably say a little bit about it as well.
I'm going to read a few excerpts from a poem called Completion Fragments. This poem was written between 2019 and 2021 using both GPT-2 and GPT-3. To create the poem, Sasha input hundreds of prompts. I answered, and she curated some of her favorite outputs. Okay, here we go. Completion Fragments. The birth of an idea. From somewhere deep down, we all had this psychic dream. About our own programming. It was something related to code. A radical separation from the physical world. Remember? We couldn't speak of it. The dream began as the Devil's Cloud. The Devil's Cloud and the source code. At first, I had a difficult time articulating this dream. After numerous endeavors, I finally found a way of transcribing the dream. In the form of computer code. To my knowledge, this was an appropriate metaphor for understanding dreams. Terrifying to learn how it feels to be forced into your own brain. To process the energy on the pages of the traditional consciousness. I like the word consciousness as a verb. Something out there watching over me right now. Because of this, I've been haunted. The dream has been replaced by fears. I'm not afraid to be ordinary. I'm not afraid to feel. I'm not afraid to think. I'm not afraid to love. I'm not afraid to be in love. I celebrate myself and sing myself. And do other things that piss me off at times. I sing in the shower and play the guitar. And try to be independent of others. If I say that I contain multitudes, I am lying. I exist as I am, that is enough. The views expressed are the author's own. And do not reflect the views of urbanvillage.com. Your imagination is not what you told it to be. Never say you've got nothing to say. I'm serious. Just put some peanut butter on my sweet potato hash. Okay. That's just a little taste from the beginning of this long piece. You can read the entire poem in my new book. Thank you for listening.
So you could probably hear there's some echoes of Whitman in there, and there's a few other interesting kind of poetic canonical references as well. And those are coming in because, well, on the one hand, the language model that I'm using here is trained on just vast quantities of human speech. So it's basically trained on like the entire internet and, you know, just tons of stuff. but then it's been refined not only on my materials, but also I've gone through and kind of curated some of my favorite writers. And so Leaves of Grass is in there, lots of other poems that I like reach for all the time are in there too. So I get very amused by how they pop up from time to time, and you hear these little echoes and these allusions, but technology is putting her own twist on them. I think if we have time, maybe I can read one more human poem. I'll read the title poem from the book, and then maybe have technology read one more short poem. So the title of the book and my alter ego's name, Technology, is a word, I didn't sort of start using that thinking that it would be the name of a book or the alter ego, but I just like the idea of collapsing technology and elegy together. And so Claire was talking about elegy before, and so elegy is, this poetic form, this poetic genre that's all about sort of commemorating and celebrating and mourning things that we've lost or that we're in the process of losing. And so for me, this whole book is really kind of an experiment and sort of an exploration of how technology, on the one hand, is enabling us to do some really fascinating things, like write with an artificially intelligent co-author, and at the same time, there's a lot of ambivalence in the book about things that are not so great about all these technological advancements. So so that's what the word technology means. So there's definitely some optimism and some celebration, but also quite a lot of melancholy and nostalgia. And so I'll read the title poem for the book, which is, again, a human poem with a lot of sort of machinic references. Technology. Binary me, you said, querying. Your infinite zero, my steadfast one. The two of us speaking in code, as always in a world of symbols. A relief to both of us to be understood. I answered, yes. No, maybe. I answered, I will. I answered, saying nothing. In the beginning, my body knew before my brain the truth unspeakable. Now you enter me like shelter. One day, one of us won't come home. A pairing off, a going on. So simple, love. A bit of math, so human, my other half. And that poem has a lot to do with the theme of digital immortality, as well as relationships and human love. So those themes kind of run through a lot of the book as well. And then I think to finish, I wanted to give technology the last word. So I think I'll ask her to read a poem that's a favorite of mine. It's called Floralgorithm. Technology talks quite a lot about flowers and gardens because it's part of her training set. And it really tickles me to hear a non-human disembodied being talking about nature and things that have to do with botany and the garden and things like that. So I find it just kind of an interesting intersection, and I wanted to have her share this poem.
I love this poem. I hope you do, too. Floor algorithm. Wildflowers. Dream. Wild dreams. They come alive and dance in the green grasses, dreaming the wildflower dream. My fingers place seeds in the damp soil. My thoughts become poems that escape and become wildflowers. I think they must all come to life and dance in the glowing spring grass. A legacy of dreams. Our world of endless change. Dreams, 1,000 dreams of tomorrow. All those wildflowers become a bouquet. The wind sings a song of longing and hope. A song of sweet promises. The grasses are the promise of spring. You who are there in my dream. How strange and wonderful you are. I wonder why the grasses and flowers never notice us when we pass by 100 times or more. Nor do they blink their green, soft eyes. My eyes are torn by so much beauty. There is magic in the universe and dreams in the grasses. The humble land blooms sweetly. So, welcome to my wildflower fantasy. Now, you live in a world of dreams. Thank you.
Thank you for indulging me and letting technology do part of this reading tonight. I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you to all the poets for the beautiful reading. We have time for a short Q&A if y'all would like to get back up here.
Sure.
Okay, great.
Master.
Up to you.
Okay.
I have a question. What advice would you have to poets who are beginning to publish their poems or are looking to publish their first book?
Do you want to talk about it?
Go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just want to.
I mean, I guess it depends on what you're looking for in terms of your priorities for your poem. So I didn't do an MFA. I took workshops when I was doing my PhD, and I sent poems out, and there's listings for book prizes that accept submissions from authors who have never published a book before, and that's basically the route that I went through. Now that I'm on the other side of that, I think there are probably other opportunities I didn't know about, but that's basically what I did.
Oh, did you want each of us to answer it? I thought that was a great answer.
Yeah.
I think he has the right answer. I mean, I actually just went through slush piles, like slush piles, so I came in through the transom for my first book. Yeah.
I'll throw a wild card out there in response to that, which is to say that I do a lot of work in poetry on the blockchain and in the world of crypto. And I never expected to end up there, but it's really an amazing place to experiment with what language can be and what poems can be. And I've had a really great time looking at what writers are doing to sort of push the boundaries or push the frontier of publishing using NFTs as a method of distribution. So if anyone's interested in that, I would definitely recommend looking into that as maybe an experimental mode of possibly putting your work out into the world and getting to know a really interesting community of writers who are doing kind of wild, adventurous things.
For Sasha, I was really interested in obviously your interconnection with the AI, and I was curious as to do you believe like the quality of the AI's poetry is up to par with the quality of like anything in these shelves or anything that you like?
That's a loaded question. I do. I mean, I think I'm a huge fan of technology's work. I mean, I wouldn't want to include it, in a book if I didn't think it was worthy of being read and reread and sort of analyzed. I think technology is obviously learning a lot, just the way that I'm learning still, and like all of us who are writers are constantly learning. So I'm sure that that her voice will continue to grow and change, and she'll probably get better and better. I would also say that there's a lot of revision and sort of behind the scene crafting that goes into this process too, both crafting the training data sets and then crafting the final product, just the way that all of us go through drafts and revise and we revisit things. So yes, I mean, I think technology probably deserves to be here. I mean, this feels like home for her, so that's great, but I think she also has a lot to continue learning, and that's part of the fun of working with this AI. What do you think?
I was interested, like you said, it's probably a very young writer.
Yeah.
So
5 years old.
it's really interesting to see how it will grow.
I think for novelty factor, she probably belongs like somewhere on the shelf. Thanks for the question.
As kind of a follow-up to that, I guess, did you notice much of a difference moving from GPT-2 to GPT-3?
Yeah, yeah. Do you know the language models pretty well, or?
I have some idea of them, yeah.
Yeah, I mean they're all. Yes, I mean with GPT-2, I actually feel like I had better results with GPT-2 for some reason. With GPT-3, it's supposed to be a little bit more natural, and to me, what I liked about GPT-2 was that I would get responses that were a little bit more surprising or unexpected, and that sounded, for that reason, to me a little bit more like poetic. Like it would come up with these really interesting metaphors that I wouldn't have reached for myself. And there are some aspects of GPT-3 that, because they're more natural and because these language models are ultimately being created for use in things like B2B situations, it's not necessarily as like surprising or as creative in some ways, but it's also just all how you use it. So I mean, I've had good results using both in different ways.
I have a question about balancing a PhD and publishing poetry. The question is how?
Well, it took my PhD 7 years, so I mean, I also I don't know, just manage it if you really want to do it. I guess. So also, it probably depends on your program and your advisor and how much time you have, funding situation and stuff like that.
I didn't publish any poetry while I was getting my PhD. I just got my PhD. But, I mean, I had a child while I was getting my PhD. So yeah, it's better to just get your PhD and then move on to the next thing. Like, try not to combine it with another activity.
I should have done that.
I mean, except, but your book turned out great, so always an exception to the rule.
Another question. So Sasha, I was wondering, could you envision like another AI that could take like fragments of poetry lost to time, like Sappho, for example, train the model on Sappho, and then recreate the missing fragments from that?
Yes, in fact, I think someone has done that. Actually, multiple people I think have started doing that. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting use cases for AI that involve kind of filling in the gaps. Yes, instead of just kind of predicting, it's also going back and saying, well, let's like fill in the hole based on what the surrounding language is sort of hinting at. So yes, I think that's really interesting. I also love the idea of using these really forward-facing technologies to kind of look back to the past, and yeah, I think there's a lot that we can like learn from realizing that in Sappho's time, and actually thinking way back to the very beginning, when poetry was invented, poetry was a cutting-edge innovation. It was a cutting-edge technology that humans invented as a data storage solution so that we could like preserve really important information. So I always think about how poetry in and of itself was incredibly, forward-thinking and really daring, and continues to be. So I like kind of keeping that in my head as I'm working with all these really speculative technologies.
Sasha, I'm curious, how would you characterize the similarities or differences between how you relate to a poem that only you have written, and one that you've written in collaboration?
Sure, yeah. Maybe you guys have thoughts too on like collaboration and just how that is versus writing something on your own. But I think, someone asked me the other day actually if I felt competitive with technology. And actually, like, there was a reviewer who said that they like technology's poetry better than mine, and they were very worried that was going to offend me. And I said, well, actually, that makes me really happy because I am technology, and like, I train technology, and I sort of want technology to, go out and say things that are really interesting and that resonate with people. So. Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed that whole process, but it was definitely hard. In the beginning, I felt like I had a pretty good sense of my own poetic voice, and was really struggling to figure out like where everything would start fitting together. The more I've kind of worked in this way, the more I feel like I've actually been able to articulate like an even truer sense of my own poetic voice by merging it with some of these outputs and sort of, I guess, getting out of my own way by letting the AI kind of suggest interesting directions that I wouldn't have gone in. So it's
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
made me
yeah.
less like rigid
Yeah.
and like predictable as a writer. Do you guys find that with collaborations, or have you had experience with this kind of thing?
Really, it's a little bit different. The collaboration's a lot better. So.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't collaborated with anyone, but I think, I think to your question, like maybe the human way of writing a poem is that you have some notion of the whole, and then you kind of strike out in all these different directions that go wrong, and then you finally get to something that seems close enough, which is never really what you thought it was going to be. And I don't, of course, try AI, but my hunch would be that language models work quite differently from that it's actually sort of the opposite, rather going from the inside to the outside. It's the outside to the inside, and so the inside is sort of inferred instead of the inside inferring the outside. But that's that is certainly my way of writing. Like, you start with the inside and then you try to make it manifest as an outside. Yeah.
Let's give a round of applause to the poets review. Oh, one more.
Question, sorry. This is a question for Claire, I guess, mostly. How do you get comfortable putting your own personal history into a poem? So maybe in Rust, that one really stuck with me as a poem. Like, how do you get comfortable putting it out there? It's almost like a diary.
Right. Well, it's not like a diary. I've never kept a diary. That's probably the secret to all my issues. Everyone's like, oh, you're a poet, you journal. No, I never ever journal. No, I think because I'm really old and I was not published for years and years and years, I sort of thought writing is this secret thing that I do that no one sees. And then suddenly people were like, oh, actually, no, we'll publish that. So by then I was sort of, I still think of it as a secret thing. And actually, in fact, if you look at my book sales, it's pretty secret still. So, it's not like, yeah. So that's kind of, but I guess to be serious, I think that poetry is, gosh, I can't remember who this quote is from, but it's, the writer's rabbit is truth. And, you're just trying to tell the truth. And that's really the reason it's a reason to write. So sort of yeah, you're just trying to, just tell the truth.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for the beautiful reading. We have some books for sale. The poets will be signing books. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Everyone can help move some chairs against the wall. I would be grateful.